Hi, welcome again to the Just Ask series brought to you by the Eagle Heart Foundation. And so here we promote cross-cultural communication in order to get to know each other and to create and encourage community. So over the past decade, we're moving into more of a culture of having conversations that we haven't necessarily had before. Hence, the people who we are interviewing in this series may get a question that they have never considered and has never really been asked, as we have not had those conversations before, which means that their response may still be in the early stages of development, and we will have them back in the future for further awareness. So here we do come together with honor and respect and curiosity to ask each other deeper questions. The individuals who are being interviewed are speaking from their personal lived experience, and by no means are they representing the population or the culture or speaking on behalf of the population or culture that they identify with. So with that being said, let's sit back and get to know each other.
So throughout this series, we have talked about your heritage, the generation that you are a part of, struggles that you've gone through, the importance of how you want to identify and how you would prefer people refer to you as, whether that be Native or Indigenous or anything like that. And this is going to be kind of a heavy question to end on, but I think it's a very important question, because we have seen the culture become, quite frankly, invisible for a lot of people in the mainstream. People don't really think of Native Americans as a very prominent thing in American culture in general. Where do you see the First Nations people, Indigenous people in the future, and what do you hope to see in the future?
Those are very important questions. And again, this is my lived experience. I will say that in studying the Long Walk of the Navajo back in 1865, which is also the Trail of Tears, and in the Lakota Nation, and many other genocides, that absolutely, to me, speaks of cultural erasure. And then what happened is we survived. Adaptable people we are. And but I am seeing that our language is starting to disappear, and that breaks my heart. Years ago, I'm the youngest. I have an older brother and an older sister, and we got together to make fry bread, which is a very traditional Navajo type of festivity. I realized that I knew more of the Navajo language, and I'm not fluent, but I knew more of the Navajo language than my older brother and sister. So when my family came up to Denver, Colorado from the reservation, my father and mother met in seminary school to become missionaries to the Navajo Nation, right? And that's another conversation. But in that, the job that my father had up in Denver that drew him up here was to be the pastor of the Christian Indian Center, not the Indian Center, but the Christian Indian Center, which I believe is still in existence. And he was the first pastor there. It was a church full of Navajo people who were coming up from the reservation to establish a life up in more of a place where they could make more money, had more opportunities. And so what I see is that our language, based on my brother, and so we were all raised with my father speaking Navajo to the congregation. I just listened more or picked it up more. and was more interested. And but I still haven't taught my son the language that I know, because I don't know the whole thing. And so I would say that the cultural erasure didn't just happen with the 1865. Parts of it also happened with the worldview that my father took in the boarding school. And it was a different worldview than he was raised with. And so his culture became secondary to a dominant thinking culture, which is how my father describes the Bilagana, the white-skinned person. Now I am living a world that there is a lot of guilt, and now I'm popular because of my native heritage, but I want it to be positive. I don't want to be popular because of people's guilt. I want to be popular because of the culture that I came from. The Navajo think holistically. The English speaker, the Navajo speaker, thinks in terms of relationship, thinks in terms of holistic, thinks in terms of connectivity. The English speaker, more scientific based, thinks in terms of separation, labeling, division in order to identify. So this is a really good space for me to just say, I was speaking with my father one day and I said, how is it? My father actually was a translator, one of two that helped the Bilagana translate the New Testament, King James Version, to the Navajo language at a very young age, because he knew the English speaking language and he knew how to think Navajo. So for example, if you do it direct, a lot of things get lost in translation because, like, for one, if Jesus says, I am the door to get to my Father, which is God, English speaker would think, oh, you're the opportunity. Whereas the Navajo speaking language would mean, you're shutting me out from seeing God. You are the division between us both. So there's a lot that gets lost in translation. And so I asked my father one time, is it difficult to be in both languages? And he says, it's about thinking in both languages. And he said, if you put an English speaking person, English thinking person in front of a tree and you say, get to know that tree, the English speaker will start taking apart the tree and labeling it. That's the trunk, that is the branch, that is a leaf, this is the bark, that is an oak tree. And then they feel like they know the oak tree. If you put a Navajo speaking, thinking person in front of that same tree and tell that person, get to know this tree, that person would see the tree in its totality and would just look at it and feel its presence and see that the leaves are moving in a certain direction. And then they would notice that their own hair is moving in the same direction as the leaves. And there it connects and knows the tree. It knows that something greater than the tree or myself is moving us in the same direction. You are my brother, you are my sister. So the difficult times that we're in right now, especially with looking at the residential schools and the boarding schools up in Canada, as well as within, the United States, we're looking at this, let's tell the truth about our history. And that is my hope, that we will tell the truth about our history, that I will not be popular out of guilt, that I will be popular out of the culture and the things that I can represent, and that we can take these jewels and create a collective future for all of us to learn and share, and so that we can move forward. And I don't only see this from the position of being my lived experience. I wish that for other cultures as they begin to get erased. And I can tell you just on that, it I take note when people talk about the POC, the person of color, and they talk about the Black body, they talk about the Hispanic body, they talk about the Asian community, and they leave out Native American. So I hope that stops happening. And I hope that all of our cultures collectively can come together and rejoice and celebrate in each other's authenticity.
I think that is a wonderful thing. And I completely agree with you. It's something, even as a white identifying individual, my grandfather is Portuguese. So I have a certain thing with that, but he was always very ashamed of that. So he would identify as white. He would put down on forms that he was white because of that. So I have that in my background as well. And it's sad to see your culture vanish a little bit because people are also ashamed to identify as it. And I'm so grateful that there are so many people like you who are trying to bring it back from the brink. And thank you so much for sharing with us. And I can't wait to see who else is going to be a part of this series.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alana. And if you have enjoyed the Just Ask series, please like and subscribe. And of course, comment if there's something that you want to hear about or a culture that you are embarrassed but want to ask those deeper questions. You can always send us an email through the Eagle Heart Foundation website, which is www.eagleheart-foundation.org. And it will be in the comments section below. Thank you so much.